Hello and welcome to the 2009 Magic the Gathering World Championships. I'm Randy Bueller here with Brian David Marshall, and it is team finals time.
In Game 1 of the Legacy match, Lee mulliganed to 6 on the play. Rozone kept his opening 7. Lee played only an island on his first turn. Rozone did better with a duress off an underground sea, revealing Daze, Standstill, Mutavault, and Wasteland. He took the Standstill. Lee used the Wasteland immediately to kill the underground sea. Rozone then used a polluted delta to replace it with a wasteland-proof island. Lee again had nothing better than a land, this time a Mutavault. Rozone also played a second land, using a flooded strand, to find a second underground sea that he used to cast a Sensei's Divining Top. Lee then used 2 dazes to stop the Sensei's Divining Top from resolving. He untapped and played a Curse Catcher, his first creature of the game, and not one that put significant pressure on his opponent by itself. The play left Lee with only 2 cards in hand. Rozone sensed weakness but could not capitalize, and once again passed the turn with no play. Lee's Curse Catcher pecked for its first damage, then was joined on the battlefield by an Umezawa's Jitte. On his turn, Rozone did nothing more than ponder. Rozone chose to keep the ponder cards on top, then cast Thoughtseize to see the 1 card left in his opponent's hand. Lee's Lord of Atlantis headed to the bin, leaving him with no cards. Undaunted, Lee equipped his Curse Catcher with the Umezawa's Jitte and attacked, hoping for the best. The best was not to come, however. On the following turn, Rozone finally made his move with Lotus Petal, Cabal Ritual, and Ad Nauseam, with 1 mana to spare for the Curse Catcher. Rozone stopped after 15 cards, then unloaded them all on his helpless opponent. 3 more Lotus Petals, 2 Chrome Moxes, 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds, a Dark Ritual, 2 Cabal Rituals, and 1 Duress later, and there was a lethal Tendrils of Agony pointed directly at Lee. Rozone is now up 1 game to Lee's 0. And while Austria takes Game 1 in Legacy on the back of the big Tendrils, China took the first game in both Standard and Extended. Over at the Standard match, they were going to Game 2, with Austrian Benedikt Klauser playing Serigi Refuge and Glacial Fortress into a previously unexpected Zendikar Common versus Wu Tong's Jund deck, Spreading Seas. The sea shut off the mana fixing of Tong's Rootbound Crag, but Klauser failed to find a 3rd land off the cantrip. Still, the disruption of the Spreading Seas seemed to work. Tong had no play on 3 lands. Klauser found a second Serigi Refuge, going up to 22, and Tong fetched out a second swamp off of Verdant Catacombs to fall to 18 life. The double black mana enabled a Vampire Nighthawk. Klauser merely fetched up a mountain and passed, dipping to 19 from Nighthawk beats. Klauser chose not to Lightning Bolt the Vampire Nighthawk, but instead saved the mana to counter Tong's Maelstrom Pulse on his Spreading Seas with double negative. Klauser untapped and laid another Planeswalker ally, a Johnny Vengeant, who kept the tapped Nighthawk in lockdown. With Tong's red mana still locked away under the Spreading Seas, he could not cast spells and was forced to discard a Sprouting Thrynax. The Austrian continued Spreading Seas around with a 3rd copy, now locking his Chinese opponent out of green mana as well. A Johnny Vengeant continued to tick up and keep the Vampire Nighthawk on ice. Sphinx of Dwar Isle arrived on the Austrian competitor's side of the table. Tong finally found an untapped source of red, and he used it to Blightning Klauser's hand and remove 3 loyalty counters from his Planeswalker. Klauser discarded Day of Judgment and Lightning Bolt, and then pointed a second copy of the burn spell at the Vampire Nighthawk. The Sphinx of Dwar Isle beat Tong down to 9. Then a Johnny Vengeant used his Lightning Helix ability to take Tong to a precarious 6. When the Chinese player's second vampire, Malakir Blood Witch, was countered with Essence Scatter, Tong packed it up. The match is now tied, Wu Tong with 1 game along with Benedict Klauser with 1 game. As for the other matches, the extended matchup was evened up a game apiece, with Magus of the Moon overtaking the blue-white Thopter Foundry, Sword of the Meat control deck, to tie the match at 1-1. In Legacy, many merfolk lords and a suite of counter magic left Rozone at 1 life and without options, also tying it at 1-1. With all matches heading into the decisive 3rd game, the countries were tied at 3 games apiece. Catching up to the final extended game, Xiang cast Thopter Foundry, along with engineered explosives for 0. Attack from Xiang's meddling mage continued, while Bernard Lerner sat largely passive in the game, building up cards in hand for 1 big turn. The big turn began with Seething Song, which resolved, and a Magus of the Moon, which met Mana Leak. Lerner used the mana he had floating, and 1 more, to cast Seething Song in order to pay for that Mana Leak. A Mana Tithe forced Lerner to tap his last mana. This meant another Mana Tithe could stop the Seething Song, and at the end of all of this, Magus of the Moon was countered by the original Mana Leak. Eager to shorten the clock on the game, Xiang sacrificed engineered explosives and a Seed of the Synod to make Thopter tokens with Thopter Foundry. Attacks took Lerner to 8, before another engineered explosives for 0 came down. Lerner tried for a Demigod of Revenge. China was down to 1 card in hand, and had no responses. All-In Red wasn't the only deck to go all-in, as Xiang sacrificed all the non-creature artifacts on the battlefield to create tokens, and attacked with a total of 5 of them plus Meddling Mage. 1 Thopter was blocked, leaving only 2 damage left to deal to take the game. Lerner used Rite of Flame to cast Empty the Warrens for 4 Goblin tokens. Xiang looked a little quizzical. Those goblins would not be able to stop his team. What was going on? He used a fetch land to get a source of black mana, and cast Thoughtseize. All that was in Lerner's hand was a mountain. The Austrian extended his hand, and was defeated. Zhang Xiang wins the first leg of the team competition, while the Austrian stopped Wutong in the standard match thanks to Benedict Klauser's red-white-blue control deck. It all comes down to the Legacy match. In this game, Li Bo has 7 power of creatures on the table to Rozone's 7 life. Rozone finally resolves a Sensei's Divining Top, looking for a potential game-winning ad nauseum on top, and doesn't find it. Congratulations to China, your 2009 national team champions.